Li Muyang scanned the inn's grand hall and asked, "Maiden, are we waiting for someone here?" The glass immortal maiden, dressed in azure, appeared indifferent, but her eyes constantly watched the inn's entrance. From her demeanor, it was clear that the maiden had grown impatient. Li Muyang, who knew nothing about the plot, sat down and immediately delved into the scenario, taking the initiative to gather information. Upon hearing Li Muyang's question, the glass immortal maiden glanced at him and said, "The gates of Laoshan City have been sealed. I am waiting here for an old acquaintance who can lead us out of the city." The glass immortal maiden succinctly explained the situation. After the maiden spoke, the taskbar on the upper right corner of Li Muyang's vision also changed. "Meet with the glass immortal maiden completed. New task. Please ensure the glass immortal maiden's safety until the guide arrives." The newly updated taskbar made Li Muyang breathe a sigh of relief. It seems the danger in this inn still lingered. Li Muyang's gaze swept around the inn's grand hall once more. Including the manager and the waiter, there were a total of 8 people. The other 6, all blades on their backs and swords in hand, looked travel-worn, merely stopping briefly at the horse-post pavilion. So, was the danger coming from these 6? Did someone want to prevent the glass immortal maiden from entering Laoshan City? Li Muyang pondered silently, observing attentively. At that moment, the waiter came over smilingly with a plate of dishes. "Esteemed guests, here is your pork knuckle." The waiter placed a steaming, fragrant plate of pork knuckle on the table. The glass immortal maiden slightly frowned. "We didn't order pork knuckle." This remark instantly put Li Muyang on alert. He discreetly glanced at the waiter in front of him while inconspicuously leaning his hand on the handle of his waist knife. Yet the waiter smiled. "This is a treat from the manager to both esteemed guests." Li Muyang looked towards the counter, only to see that the manager, dressed in a gray cotton jacket and wearing a fur cap, was smiling obsequiously. Thus, Li Muyang chose to remain silent. The glass immortal maiden glanced at the steaming pork knuckle and said, "Then we thank the manager." The glass immortal maiden didn't waste words, calmly accepting the manager's flattery. However, even after accepting the dish, she continued to sit quietly, her eyes occasionally drifting towards the door, showing no intention of eating. Li Muyang was even less likely to eat. He was well aware that some form of peril lurked within the inn. If he didn't intervene, the glass immortal maiden would likely be dead within minutes. With such circumstances, how could Li Muyang be in the mood to eat? He stayed alert to the several travelers within the inn. Just then, at the door, a bearded, burly man suddenly slammed the table and stood up. "Manager, why do they have pork knuckle, and we don't?" The bearded, burly man looked angry. Seeing a customer enraged, the waiter hurried over. "Esteemed guest," however, before the waiter could even start to speak, the bearded man suddenly swung his sword. In an instant, a head soared into the air, rolling precisely to the feet of Li Muyang and his company. Meanwhile, the waiter's headless body, gushing with blood, fell straight down. The half-blood-soaked burly man glared fiercely at the shopkeeper. "Do you look down on me?" Inside horse-post pavilion, a deadly silence descended in an instant. The shopkeeper, wearing a dogskin hat, stood there dumbfounded, terrified, never expecting the stranger to suddenly start killing over a triviometer. By Li Muyang's side, glass immortal maiden suddenly stood up, her eyes cold. Seeing the muscular man commit murder, glass immortal maiden didn't speak. She drew her sword directly. In the clanging of the sword, the ancient sword behind glass immortal maiden unsheathed, turning into a streak of cold light that swept across, instantly piercing through the burly man's chest, sending him flying and nailing him firmly against the inn's wall. Yet, a bizarre situation occurred. The burly man whose heart had been pierced by the sword didn't die. With his massive body pinned against the wall, he instead revealed a ferocious smile. "Glass immortal maiden's swordsmanship is truly astounding," he exclaimed. The burly man's body began to undergo a transformation, with dense, pitch-black scales and flesh swelling on his body. In the blink of an eye, The burly man transformed into a more than 2-meter-tall monster covered in scales and resembling a beast, but with a giganticuman head, still covered with black scales. The flying sword embedded in his chest was gripped by his thick claws, unable free itself. Meanwhile, the other patrons in the inn also transformed. Instantly, a surge of demonic energy filled the inn, and 6 eerie half-demon figures appeared before Li Muyang and the others. Even the usually impassive face of Glass Immortal Maiden finally changed. "Demon cultivator," she exclaimed in disbelief, looking at the 6 demonic shadows. "Was the unrest in Laotian City your doing?" The 6 demon cultivators sneered. "Heaven has a road which you did not take. Hell has no gate yet you come forth. Glass Immortal Maiden, today is your day to die." While the demon cultivator pierced through the chest with the flying sword did not approach but stood there gripping the flying sword, not letting it escape his control. The remaining 5 demon cultivators all charged towards Li Muyang and her. Seeing the demonic energy soaring, Glass Immortal Maiden quickly grabbed Li Muyang's shoulder. "Go," she said. Having lost her flying sword, Glass Immortal Maiden didn't plan to entangle any longer but instead decided to escape with Li Muyang first. But no sooner had her hand touched Li Muyang's shoulder than the ground beneath Glass Immortal Maiden blew open violently, and a jaw full of sharp fangs suddenly emerged from the ground, instantly biting into Glass Immortal Maiden's legs. Was there a demon cultivator underground? Li Muyang immediately activated Time Stop, and in an instant everything in the world fell into a monotone world of black and white. The demonic cultivator with a ferocious face, Glass Immortal Maiden unable to move, her legs bitten by a ghastly mouth. Everyone's movements and expressions were frozen in that moment when Li Muyang activated Time Stop. The group of demon cultivators moved too quickly, almost instantly completing their actions and encirclement, hardly giving Li Muyang time to react. Fortunately, by activating Time Stop in time, Glass Immortal Maiden was spared from dying on the spot. There was no time to think further, as Time Stop only lasted 7 seconds. While time stood still, Li Muyang immediately drew his waist knife and slashed it at the nearest demon cultivator. The sharp blade ferociously struck towards the monster's head. If his heart being pierced didn't kill him, surely having his head chopped off would. With his strike, Li Muyang employed the most ruthless killing move. However, when the blade with ferocious force hit the neck of the monster, Li Muyang felt as though he had struck sturdy steel. The enormous recoil numbed his palms. The sturdy long knife, under the shaking force of the recoil, shattered on the spot. Li Muyang was stunned. Damn, such tremendous defensive power. Ordinary blades can't breach the defense of these monsters.